The human had not expected life on the alien colony to be simple, but he never imagined his biggest challenge would be his new roommate. His name was Daniel, a young man who had come to the colony for work. The city was a mix of species, glowing, towers built with alien glass and narrow streets filled with strange smells. When he found a cheap apartment, he thought it was luck. He did not ask too many questions about the roommate, only that the rent was low and the place was close to his job. But when he finally moved in, he realized things would not be so easy. His roommate was an alien girl, small in frame, with pale, green skin that glowed faintly under the light. Her big, dark eyes looked almost human, but too sharp, too watchful. She wore long robes that covered her body fully, even in the heat. The first time they met, she only nodded once, said her name, quickly, Lyra, and then disappeared into her room, shutting the door behind her. From the start, something felt strange. She avoided him. When Daniel greeted her in the morning, she only gave a tiny nod. When he tried to ask her where the kitchen supplies were, she pointed without speaking. At night, he could hear her footsteps moving slowly, carefully, as if she tried not to make any sound. Sometimes she paused outside his room as if listening, then moved away. Daniel thought maybe she did not like humans. On this colony, humans were still considered newcomers. Some alien races respected them, others feared them, and some hated them. He wondered if she hated him too, but her eyes did not show hate. They showed something else: fear. One evening, Daniel sat at the table eating his simple dinner. He noticed Lyra standing at the kitchen doorway holding a glass of water. She stood there too long, staring at him without a word. When he looked up, she quickly turned her head, pretending she was only checking something on the counter. Then she walked back into her room, leaving him with a strange feeling. Days passed like this. Silence, short glances, and walls between them. Daniel tried to be polite. He made sure to clean his dishes, never play music too loud, and give her space. Still, she stayed distant. He began to wonder if living here had been a mistake. One night, however, something happened that made his heart race. Daniel was half asleep when he heard soft footsteps again outside his door. This time they stopped. He opened one eye and saw the faintest shadow move across the crack of the door. It was her, standing there, not moving. She did not knock, did not say anything, just stood in silence for a long minute. Then slowly, the footsteps faded, and her door clicked shut. Daniel lay awake for hours after that. Why was she outside his room? Was she afraid of him? Or was she afraid of something else? The mystery grew heavier the more he thought about it. In the morning, when he looked at her, he could see her eyes were red like she had not slept. She quickly turned away, hiding her face. At work, Daniel found it hard to focus. His mind kept returning to his roommate. Why did she act like that? She looked young, maybe close to his own age, but she carried herself like someone who had lived through many battles. Quiet, watchful, careful. One evening, a storm rolled across the city. Alien lightning cracked through the sky and the building trembled. The power flickered out. Daniel lit a small lamp and sat down, listening to the wind. Then he heard a soft knock. It was her. For the first time since he moved in, she spoke more than one word. Her voice was soft, shaking. "Do you mind if I sit here? I do not like storms." Daniel nodded, surprised. "Of course, sit." She stepped in slowly, her robe brushing the floor. She sat at the far end of the couch, hugging her knees. For a long while they did not speak. The storm outside filled the silence. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "Humans are different." Daniel turned his head. Different how? She did not answer, only shook her head and pulled the robe tighter. But he caught the look in her eyes. It was not anger. It was not hate. It was fear, mixed with something else. Curiosity, maybe hope. That night, Daniel realized his roommate was more than strange. She was hiding a story, something heavy, something that made her watch him with eyes full of questions she did not dare ask. And he knew one thing for certain. Whatever it was, sooner or later, it was going to come out. The storm had passed, but the tension inside the small apartment only grew stronger. Daniel thought maybe his roommate, Lyra, would relax after that night on the couch. She had sat close enough for him to hear her shaky breathing, but far enough to keep a wall between them. When morning came, she disappeared again into her room, silent as always. Still, something had changed. Daniel noticed her eyes lingered on him a little longer. She no longer hid completely. Sometimes when he cooked, he caught her standing by the doorframe, watching. When he smiled at her, she turned away quickly, but not before he saw a flicker of confusion cross her face. Days went by in uneasy quiet. Daniel tried not to push her. He told himself that living with someone from another species came with challenges. She had her ways and he had his. If she wanted space, he would give it to her. But deep inside, he could feel it. Something inside her was pulling closer, even as she tried to push away. Then it happened. The accident. It was late one evening, after Daniel came back from work. His body was tired and all he wanted was a hot shower. He dropped his jacket, kicked off his boots, and stepped into the bathroom. The water was warm, washing away the stress of the day. For a moment, he closed his eyes and let the world fade. What he did not realize was that he had forgotten something simple. He had not locked the bathroom door. Outside, Lyra walked quietly through the hallway. She held a small bundle of clothes in her hands, heading for the laundry corner. Her thoughts were heavy, full of memories she wanted to forget. But then she stopped. A sound reached her ears, the steady rush of water, the soft hum of a human voice. Daniel was singing, not loudly, just under his breath. It froze her in place. She had never heard him sing before. Humans, she had been told, were loud, wild creatures. But his voice was gentle, steady, almost soothing. Without thinking, she stepped closer to the door, her curiosity stronger than her fear. Her hand brushed against the knob. The door gave way. It opened a crack, and in that moment, her world turned upside down. The steam curled out, and through it, she saw him. Daniel stood under the water bare, his skin glowing in the dim light. He turned slightly, unaware she was there. His body was not like the alien male she had grown up around. It was different, broader, sharper, and yet strangely vulnerable. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. She had seen drawings, heard whispers, warnings from her elders. Never trust a human male. Never look at them this way. They are dangerous. But now, as she stood frozen at the door, she did not see danger. She saw something else. Then Daniel turned, and his eyes met hers. For a second, time stopped. He blinked, shocked. She froze like a child caught stealing. Neither moved. Then Daniel reacted. He quickly grabbed a towel, wrapping it around himself. "Lyra, what are you doing?" His voice was startled, not angry. Lyra gasped, stepping back, her face flushing a pale green color. I didn't mean." Her words broke, her throat tight. She stumbled, dropped the bundle of clothes, and ran down the hallway into her room. The door slammed shut. Daniel stood in the steam, heart pounding. His mind raced. She had seen him naked. But more than that, he had seen her expression, not just shock, not just fear. There had been something else in her eyes, something deep, unspoken. Inside her room, Lyra pressed her back against the door, her chest rising and falling in panic. Her thoughts spun wildly. She had broken every rule she set for herself. She was supposed to keep distance, supposed to stay safe. But she had looked. She had seen. And what she saw shattered everything she had been told. That night, she did not come out for dinner. She stayed hidden, silent. Daniel knocked once, asked if she was okay. No answer. He left her alone. But he could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her shocked face, her wide, dark eyes, the way she had run as if she was terrified of herself. The accident changed something between them. The next morning, when Daniel stepped into the kitchen, she was already there. She stood by the counter, her robe wrapped tightly, her hands shaking as she poured water into a cup. She did not look at him, but when she finally spoke, her voice was thin, trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Daniel paused. He wanted to tell her it was fine, that it was just an accident, but he saw the fear in her eyes. She was not just embarrassed. She was fighting something bigger, old warnings, deep scars, maybe even shame. "Lyra," he said gently. "It was nothing, really. Forget it happened." But she did not forget. She could not. That one moment had broken the wall she built around herself. And now, every time she looked at him, she could not stop remembering. The accident had unlocked something dangerous and unknown, something that would not be hidden for long. The morning after the accident, the apartment felt colder, even though the sun poured through the alien glass windows. Daniel tried to act normal. He poured himself coffee, sat at the table, and flipped through his datapad. But his eyes kept drifting to the hallway, waiting for the sound of her door. Lyra did not come out for a long time. When she finally did, her steps were slow, careful, like she was trying not to be seen at all. She moved straight to the kitchen without looking at him. She grabbed a piece of fruit, kept her head low, and almost ran back toward her room. "Lyra," Daniel said softly. She froze. The fruit nearly slipped from her hands. She turned halfway, her eyes wide, as if she had been caught in some forbidden act. "I just wanted to say," Daniel continued, his voice calm, "about last night. It was nothing. You don't have to worry." For a moment she stood silent. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her throat worked as if she wanted to speak, but the words were too heavy. Then she gave a single nod and vanished back into her room. Daniel sighed. He told himself not to overthink. Accidents happen. But deep inside, he knew this was not just about embarrassment. There was something deeper, heavier, behind her silence. Something she was carrying long before she walked in on him. That day, Daniel went to work, but his thoughts never left the apartment. He remembered the look on her face when she saw him. Shock, fear, and something else. Not disgust, not hatred. Something softer, though she tried to hide it. When he returned home, the apartment was quiet again, too quiet. No sound of footsteps, no clink of dishes. Her door was closed tight. But later that night, when he was half asleep, he heard something faint. Whispers. Her voice, speaking in her own alien tongue. He couldn't understand the words, but the tone, it was filled with confusion and fear. Curious, he pressed his ear closer to the wall that separated their rooms. He caught only one word in the human language. Different. She had whispered it more than once. Daniel lay awake for hours. Different. What did she mean? Different from what? Different from who? The next morning, he decided to break the silence. He waited by the table with 2 cups of coffee. When she stepped out, her eyes instantly flicked to the second cup. She hesitated, clearly ready to retreat. "It's for you," Daniel said quickly. "I don't know if you drink it, but thought I'd try." Her hand lingered near the cup, then pulled back. Finally, with visible effort, she reached out and took it. She did not drink, but she stood there holding it. "Lyra," Daniel said carefully. "I know what happened was awkward, but I'm not angry, and I don't want you to feel unsafe here." Her eyes snapped to his, sharp and intense. "Unsafe?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded. "Yes, you don't need to fear me." She stared at him for a long time, her dark eyes searching his face. Then, almost too quietly to hear, she said, "That is what they always say, before the hurt comes." Daniel blinked. Her words struck deep, heavier than anything he expected. "Who told you that?" he asked gently, but she shook her head. clutching the cup tighter, and retreated again into her room. That evening, Daniel thought about her words. They. Who were they? And what had they done to make her believe humans, or maybe all males, were only capable of hurt? The next few days were the same. Lyra avoided him more than ever, but something had changed. She lingered longer in the hallways. She paused when he spoke, as if she wanted to answer but couldn't. Sometimes when she thought he wasn't looking, her eyes followed him with a strange curiosity. One night, he stepped onto the balcony for fresh air. The alien city stretched out below, neon lights glowing like stars. To his surprise, Lyra was already there, sitting in the corner with her knees pulled to her chest. He almost turned back, not wanting to disturb her, but then she spoke without looking at him. You did not try to shame me. Daniel frowned. Why would I? She looked at him then, her eyes reflecting the city lights. Because that is what I was taught, that humans, when they are exposed, they take power. They make the other feel small. Daniel's chest tightened. I'd never do that. Not to you, not to anyone. Her eyes searched his again, full of doubt but also a fragile spark of hope. She lowered her voice. Then why, when I saw you, did you cover yourself? Why did you turn away? Because, Daniel said softly, I wanted you to feel safe. The silence that followed was heavy, but different. Not the old silence of fear. This one was fragile, uncertain, like something new had cracked open between them. For the first time since he moved in, Lyra did not run. She sat with him on the balcony, watching the lights. She did not speak again, but her presence was enough. Inside her mind, though, she was in chaos. Everything she had been told about humans was breaking apart, and the accident that should have driven her farther away had instead pulled her closer. But was it safe to trust? Or would this fragile thread snap, leaving her in pain once more? Theron. Night on the balcony left a mark on both of them. Daniel lay awake long after Lyra had gone back to her room. He kept replaying her words. Why did you cover yourself? The innocence and the pain behind that question refused to leave his mind. He realized then, Lyra had been taught to expect cruelty. She was waiting for him to prove he was dangerous, waiting for the moment he would betray the fragile safety of their apartment. But when he didn't, when he did the opposite, her world cracked. The next day, Daniel decided not to push her. He acted normal. He cooked his meals, cleaned the table, even whistled while fixing a loose light strip in the kitchen. He wanted her to see that life with him was ordinary, safe, predictable. But inside her room, Lyra's thoughts were a storm. She sat on the floor, her robe wrapped around her like armor. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the human. His body, his eyes, his reaction. Not hunger, not power, just shock, and then dignity. He covered himself. He turned away. He gave her control. It was something she had never seen before. By evening, she could no longer sit in silence. She stepped into the hallway, her bare feet quiet on the floor. Daniel was at the table reading from his datapad. When he looked up and met her eyes, she almost turned back. But something inside her whispered, not tonight. Daniel, she said softly. He set the pad down, careful not to startle her. Yes? Her fingers twisted together. Her voice trembled. May I speak with you? He nodded, motioning to the chair across from him. Of course. She sat, but not easily. Her shoulders were tense. Her eyes darted between the table and his face. For a while, silence stretched, broken only by the distant hum of the city outside. Then finally she whispered, My people warned me. They said humans are not safe. They said if I ever shared space with one, I would regret it. Daniel stayed quiet, letting her speak. I believed them, she continued. That is why, when I saw you, that way, I thought you would prove them right. I thought you would take what you wanted. Her hands shook, and her voice cracked. But you didn't. You did the opposite, and now... I do not know what to believe. Daniel leaned forward, his tone gentle. Lyra, I can't speak for everyone, but I can tell you who I am. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm just trying to live same as you. Her eyes lifted, shining with a strange mixture of fear and hope. Do humans always choose? To harm or not? Yes, Daniel said. Choice is everything, that's what makes us human. She studied him, her dark eyes narrowing as if testing his words. Then she took a slow breath, and her voice dropped to almost nothing. May I tell you why I fear? Daniel nodded. If you want to. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength. When she spoke, the words came like broken glass. Before I came here, my people decided my future. They said I was small, weak, unfit to be free. They gave me to a man twice my age. They said he would protect me. But he did not want to protect, he wanted to own. Every look, every word, every touch was to remind me that I was less than him. Her hands tightened into fists. I escaped. I ran before he could bind me. I came here, to the colony, to disappear. But fear followed me. Fear lives inside me. Daniel's chest ached at her words. He wanted to reach across the table to offer comfort. But he stayed still. He knew one wrong move could shatter this fragile moment. That is why, she said, her voice trembling. When I saw you that night, I expected the same. I thought you would become him. But you didn't. Silence hung heavy between them. Then slowly, Lyra leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. Why, Daniel? Why did you not take the power when it was in your hand? He met her gaze steadily. Because respect matters. Because I see you, Lyra. Not as property, not as weak, but as someone who deserves safety. Her breath caught. For a moment, her face softened, the fear in her eyes giving way to something else, something fragile and unfamiliar. But then she pulled back, hugging her arms tight to her chest. You say these words, yet words are easy. Actions are harder. Daniel did not argue, he only said, Then give me time, let me show you. Her lips parted as if she wanted to answer, but no sound came. She stood suddenly, her chair scraping the floor. I cannot stay here now, she whispered, and before Daniel could reply, she retreated to her room and shut the door. That night, Daniel sat alone, staring at the closed door. He felt the weight of her confession, pressing down on him. She had trusted him with her pain, but at the same time she was slipping further away. In her room, Lyra lay awake, clutching her robe to her chest. Her heart raced with confusion. Daniel's words echoed in her mind. I see you, someone who deserves safety. For the first time in years, she wanted to believe. But wanting was dangerous, and as she closed her eyes, one thought haunted her. If she let him in, if she trusted him, what would happen when the past came knocking again? The next few days passed in heavy silence. Daniel noticed the change in Lyra after her confession. She was even more cautious now. She spoke less, stayed longer in her room, and whenever their eyes met, she quickly turned away. It was as if the truth she had revealed had left her raw and unprotected. Daniel didn't press her. He respected her space, but his heart was restless. Every word she had shared kept replaying in his head. They gave me to a man he wanted to own. The pain in her voice still echoed. One evening, Daniel returned home from work earlier than usual. As he walked past her door, he heard faint sounds, whispers again, but this time broken by sobs. His chest tightened. He paused, his hand hovering near the door, but he forced himself not to knock. He knew she had to choose when to let him in. Still, it hurt to hear her cry alone. That night he sat at the table, staring at the flickering lights of the city outside the window. He thought of all the times he had felt powerless in his own life, but never like her. Never chained by others' choices. He wondered how she had survived and why fate had placed her here, as his roommate, carrying secrets heavier than the world. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Lyra stepped into the kitchen holding a small box. She placed it on the table without a word. Daniel looked at her, confused. "What's this?" he asked gently. Her voice was low, almost flat. "Pieces of my past. If you want to understand, open it." She turned away and left before he could reply. Daniel stared at the box. It was old, made of alien wood, the surface etched with faint carvings of her people's symbols. Carefully, he lifted the lid. Inside were a few objects: a silver band, a broken pendant, and a strip of cloth stained at the edge. He picked up the band first. It was too wide, too heavy, meant to clasp around a wrist or neck. Not decoration, ownership. The thought made his stomach twist. Next, he touched the pendant. It had been snapped in two, jagged at the edges. On its surface was the image of a crest, maybe belonging to a clan, maybe to the man she had been given to. Whatever it was, Lyra had destroyed it, torn herself away from it. Finally, the cloth. It was small, thin, but the stain at the edge was unmistakable. Dried blood. Daniel closed the box, his hands trembling. He didn't need every detail to understand. These were not just memories. They were proof of what she had endured, what she had run from. That evening, when Lyra finally emerged from her room, he met her with quiet eyes. "I saw," he said softly. She froze, her body tense. "And now you know." "Yes," Daniel replied. "But it doesn't change what I see when I look at you. You're not weak, Lyra. You're stronger than anyone I've met." Her lips trembled, but she shook her head. "Strong? No. Strong ones do not run. Strong ones do not hide in caves or apartments pretending the past is gone. I am only what is left after the breaking." Daniel leaned forward, his voice was steady. "No. You survived. That makes you stronger than the ones who tried to break you." For a long moment she stared at him, her eyes searching for lies. But she found none. And in that silence something fragile flickered between them. Trust, small but alive. But just as quickly her face darkened. She whispered, "They are still searching." Daniel's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Her hands clenched at her robe. "The man I escaped, his clan does not forgive. To them I am not free. I am stolen property. If they find me—" Her voice broke. "They will drag me back." The room grew colder with her words. Daniel felt a chill crawl down his spine. She wasn't just hiding from memories. She was hiding from real danger. Danger that could walk through their door at any moment. "Have they found you here before?" Daniel asked. She shook her head. "Not yet. But shadows follow. I hear whispers in the market. I see faces I remember. I do not know how long I can remain hidden." Daniel's jaw tightened. His instinct screamed to protect her, to promise safety. But he knew promises would mean little if her enemies truly came. Still, he could not stay silent. "If they come," he said firmly, "they'll have to go through me first." Lyra's eyes widened. She stared at him as if he had spoken madness. "You would stand against them? Against a clan?" "Yes," Daniel said without hesitation. "Because you're not theirs. You never were." Her lips parted, her breath shaky. She wanted to believe him, but fear still chained her heart. She whispered, almost pleading, "Do not make promises you cannot keep." Daniel held her gaze. "I don't break promises." For the first time since he had met her, she did not run. She stayed in the kitchen, trembling but rooted in place. And though her fear was still heavy, her eyes shone with something else. Hope. But outside, in the city streets unseen by them both, figures moved in the shadows. Old debts were not forgotten. Old chains were not so easily broken. After her confession, the apartment felt different. The silence between them no longer carried only fear. It carried weight, yes, but also a strange new closeness, like the first thread of a bridge slowly stretching between two cliffs. Daniel noticed it first in the small things. Lyra no longer vanished the moment he entered the kitchen. She still kept distance, but she lingered a little longer, listening quietly as he spoke about his day. When he cooked, she sometimes stood near the counter, watching as if trying to understand the way humans prepared food. Once, when he offered her a piece of bread, she hesitated for a long moment before finally accepting. Her hands shook as she brought it to her lips, but when she tasted it, her eyes softened, almost childlike. For Daniel, these tiny changes were enough. He didn't push her with questions or force her to talk more. Instead, he gave her space and let her move at her own pace. But inside, he could feel the bond growing stronger. One evening, as he returned from work, he found Lyra on the balcony again. She sat with her knees pulled close, her eyes fixed on the glowing skyline. He almost turned away to give her privacy, but then she surprised him. "Daniel," she said softly, "why do you choose kindness, even when it costs you nothing to be cruel?" He stepped closer, leaning on the balcony rail. "Because cruelty only makes the world darker. And I've seen enough darkness already." She looked at him for a long time, her eyes unreadable. Then she asked, "Do all humans think like you?" Daniel shook his head with a faint smile. "No. But I can't speak for everyone. I can only speak for myself." Silence settled again, but this time it was gentle, not heavy. The night air was cool, and for the first time Daniel felt like they were not strangers sharing a roof, but something closer. Companions bound by secrets neither had expected to share. The next day brought another small change. Lyra appeared, in the living room holding a folded cloth. She approached carefully, her steps hesitant. "I fixed this," she said, handing it to him. Daniel opened the cloth and blinked. It was his jacket, the one he had torn at work a week ago. The seam had been neatly mended with careful stitches. "You did this?" he asked, surprised. She gave a tiny nod, her eyes lowering. "It was something I could do." Daniel's chest warmed. He smiled. "Thank you, Lyra. It means a lot." For the first time, her lips curved into something that looked almost like a smile. It was fleeting, fragile, but it was there. That evening, they shared dinner at the same table for the first time. Daniel cooked, and Lyra sat opposite him, silent, but present. She watched his every move, her eyes full of curiosity. He told her about human customs, why people ate together, why they laughed at the table, why meals were more than just food. Lyra listened intently, and though she said little, she stayed until the last bite was gone. The bond was growing. It was unexpected, delicate but real, yet danger was not far. Later that night, as Daniel was cleaning the dishes, Lyra approached him with sudden urgency. Her hands trembled as she gripped the counter. "They are closer," she whispered. Daniel looked at her sharply. "Who?" "My pursuers, the ones I told you about. I felt eyes on me in the market today. I heard their tongue in the crowd. They know I am here." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we'll deal with them." Her eyes widened. "You don't understand. They are many. They carry authority. If they demand me back, the colony leaders may agree. To them, I am not a person. I am property." Anger flared in Daniel's chest. "Not to me." She stared at him, her breath uneven. "Why? Why would you risk yourself for me?" Daniel wiped his hands, then faced her fully. His voice was calm, but firm. "Because no one deserves to live in chains, and because I don't want to see you taken." Her lips trembled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She whispered, "You speak as if I matter." "You do," Daniel said. "More than you realize." The words hung between them, heavy and undeniable. For a long moment, neither moved. Lyra's fear warred with something else, something new, something fragile that had begun to bloom inside her. She turned away quickly, retreating to the balcony. But Daniel knew the bond between them had deepened. He could feel it in the way she lingered near him, in the way her walls cracked each time they spoke. That night, Lyra stood under the alien stars, whispering to herself, "Why do I believe him? Why does my heart not run away?" Inside, Daniel stayed awake, listening to the faint hum of the city and wondering how long they had before her past caught up with them both. The bond was unexpected. The bond was dangerous. But it was real. And soon, it would be tested. The night was too quiet. Daniel felt it the moment he stepped onto the balcony. The city below still glowed with alien lights, but something about the air was heavy, tense. Inside, Lyra sat near the door, her robe wrapped tightly around her thin frame. She had been restless, all evening, rising to check the window, pacing the hallway, pausing every time a shadow passed outside. Finally, she whispered, "They are coming." Daniel turned sharply. "You're sure?" She nodded, her face pale. "I feel them, my clan's enforcers. They do not stop once they decide to reclaim what they believe is theirs." Before Daniel could answer, a hard knock echoed through the apartment. Both froze. The sound was heavy, official, not the knock of a neighbor. Daniel's jaw tightened. He moved to the door, but Lyra grabbed his arm. Her grip was trembling, but her eyes were desperate. "Do not open. If you open, they will take me." Another knock came, louder this time, followed by a voice in a language Daniel didn't understand. But the tone was clear, authority mixed with demand. Daniel took a deep breath. "Stay behind me." He opened the door a crack. Two tall aliens stood outside, armored in dark plates. Their eyes glowed faintly, and the crest on their chests matched the broken pendant Daniel had seen in Lyra's box. One of them stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Return the girl," he said in broken human speech. "She belongs to us." Daniel's hand tightened on the doorframe. "She doesn't belong to anyone," the alien sneered, showing sharp teeth. "You have no claim. She is marked. She is ours." Behind him, Lyra trembled, her breath shallow. "Daniel, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "If you fight them, they will kill you." Daniel turned, meeting her terrified eyes. His own were steady, filled with something she could not understand. Resolve. "Then let them try." He stepped fully into the doorway, blocking their view of her. "She's not going anywhere." The aliens exchanged a look, then one of them hissed, "You are human. You think your kind's laws protect you? They will not. Give her up, or we take her by force." Daniel's pulse hammered, but he stood his ground. "You'll have to go through me first." A long silence followed, broken only by the hum of the city lights. Then the taller alien leaned forward, his voice low and threatening. "You protect what is broken. She will betray you in the end. That is her nature." Daniel didn't flinch. "She's not broken. She's stronger than any of you." The alien snarled and took a step closer, but before he could act, Lyra's voice rang out. It was trembling but filled with fire. "No," she cried, stepping out from behind Daniel. Her small frame looked fragile against the armored giants, but her eyes burned with something new. "I am not yours. I was never yours. You chained me, but chains break. You tried to own me, but I belong to myself." Her voice shook, but she stood tall, her hands clenched at her sides. "And if I must choose tonight, I choose freedom. I choose—" She turned, her eyes locking on Daniel's. "Him." The aliens hissed, rage flashing across their faces. One of them lunged forward, but Daniel moved first. He grabbed the door and slammed it shut with all his strength, locking it in place. A heavy thud followed as fists pounded against the metal, but the door held. Inside, Lyra fell to her knees, her body shaking. Daniel knelt beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You were brave," he whispered, her eyes filled with tears. "They will come back. They will never stop." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Then neither will I." For the first time, she did not pull away. She gripped his hand tightly, clinging to him as if he was the only anchor in a storm. Her tears fell freely, but her voice carried a fragile strength. All my life I was told humans only take, but you give. You gave me choice. You gave me hope. Daniel looked at her, his heart heavy but certain. And I'll keep giving, as long as you let me. She lowered her head, whispering words almost too soft to hear. Then I choose you. The pounding on the door faded into silence. Outside, the enforcers had vanished into the night, but their threat lingered in the air. The danger was not gone. It would return. Yet inside the small apartment, something stronger than fear had begun to grow. A bond born from accident, tested by fear, now sealed by choice. Daniel knew the future would not be easy, but when Lyra leaned against him, trembling, but unbroken, he realized something important. She was no longer just his strange roommate. She was his ally, his partner, and together, they would face whatever came next.